Modah ani lefalecha, Modah ani, Modah ani lefanecha, 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 Modah ani lefanecha. So feel free to chant with me. Modah ani, Modah ani lefanecha, Modah ani, Modah ani lefanecha, 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 Modah ani, Modah ani lefanecha, 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 Modah ani lefanecha.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Rabbi Shefa Gold. And welcome everyone to, and sorry, Rachmiel also. Welcome to My Jewish Learning and our third class in our series of 10 of the most important prayers and blessings in Judaism. I am very happy to welcome Rabbi Shefa Gold, who is a leader in Aleph, the Alliance for Jewish Renewal, and received her ordination both from the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College and from Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomi. She is the director of Sea Deep, the Center for Devotional, Energy, and Ecstatic Practice in Gemmas Springs, New Mexico, though is joining us from San Diego today. And Shefa composes and performs spiritual music, such as was just performed for us now. Thank you so much. And has produced 10 albums, and her liturgies have been published in several new prayer books. So we will be looking today, or learning today, about the Modah. And again, thank you to Rabbi Shefa Gold and to her husband, Rachmiel, for that beautiful music. I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you, and thank you to My Jewish Learning for inviting me. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, which is really how to wake up in the morning, which is kind of a microcosm of waking up, waking up to life, to miracle, to blessing, to God's presence. And we get to have that microcosm every single day. We get a new chance to start again. And I think that's what the Jewish liturgy does for me, is reminds me that I can begin again each day. And how what kind of groove I enter into is going to determine so much about what's possible in the day to come. So I think about gratefulness as being the foundation of our entire spiritual practice. And in fact, the word for Jew, Yehuda, the root of it is grateful. So you could call us the grateful ones. You might think that we were the complainers or something, but no, we are the grateful ones. That's our name. That's our identity. And gratefulness is so foundational because it opens up both a receptivity and a generosity, and it's a kind of a flow of life through us. And every day we are advised to begin our day, even before we open our eyes in the morning, but as we're still lying in bed, to open up and to step into a certain groove, which is of gratefulness, which places us at that nexus point between receptivity and generosity. And we do that with these words that I was just singing, and we'll kind of get to unpack what the prayer is. It just has a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 words to it. But those words are so filled with possibility. And I think about how important it is to step into this groove of gratefulness, because it's not my default place. I wake up in the morning, and without my spiritual practice, what I might do is just sort of like the first thought in the morning might be, oh, what do I have to do today? What do I have to get done? Or kind of like, what's wrong today? And that's because we're wired that way. It's called the negativity bias of the brain, and without spiritual practice, that's where we go. And so our spiritual practice, our religious lives, is meant to be to counter that negativity bias of the brain, which is kind of wired into us. So in a sense, we are rewiring our brain to be to receive life, even the challenges of life, as possibilities, as opportunities for growth. And I'll just tell you one story of when I really opened up to gratefulness as my foundation. I was in a very hard, difficult, depressed place in my life. I was, uh, going through just a terrible time. I was in physical pain, emotional pain. I was a mess. And I went to someone who happened to be my spiritual teacher at the time. And he looked at me with kind of a pity and consternation and exasperation. And he said to me, "Well, just say thank you." And I was aghast. I was so furious with him for not, I thought not having compassion on this terrible state I was in. He said, "Go say thank you." And I turned around, I went home, and I started to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And my thank you sounded like, "Thanks a lot." It was just like, "Oh, thanks, 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 thanks." And I probably said thank you 10,000 times. And probably on that 9,999 time, I found my way to gratefulness. And something shifted inside me, and really my life kind of turned around, and I was able to step into a taste of something that I called unconditional gratefulness. And if you want to share the first page of the handout, Ben, with us, the other page. Yeah. And this exploration of gratefulness that I want to do with you, which is really the reason that we say this prayer in the morning when we wake up. I ask this question: what is unconditional gratefulness? Because the truth is that sometimes life goes my way and sometimes it doesn't. And if I was only grateful at the times when it went my way, that would maybe be just a portion of my life. But gratefulness is so important in connecting us to our resources that I want to be able to have access to it as much as possible, and to understand gratefulness as a state of consciousness. And from that state, I see the world differently. And I have access to different parts of myself. So I got very curious about this, what this possibility of unconditional gratefulness was. And I started reading lots of different things. And one of the books that I read was from someone named Brother David Steinderast, and he actually has a website, gratefulness.org, with all kinds of resources for gratefulness. But he had this description of the state of gratefulness from which we could live our lives, and I was touched by it. He says, when we are in that place of gratefulness, we are, kind of have this paradoxical feeling of that there's a calmness, and yet we are energized. We feel fulfilled, and at the same time, receptive, empty. We are uplifted, and we are also humbled. We are connected and acknowledged, and at the same moment, we are self-forgetful. Like that, and that's the state from which I want to live my life. And so when I wake up in the morning, this prayer, and we'll just look at it phrase by phrase. So it helps me to touch into that resource inside me. And it opens me up to things that I might not see before, and gives me kind of just a different way of approaching life. So the idea is, can I wake up each day with this prayer before I'm, it's like before I get to this other default place that says, okay, what's wrong? What do I have to do today? What am I burdened by? Let's, begin by connecting up. And so the first words, Modah ani lefanecha, for men, Modeh ani lefanecha. I translate it quite literally as I gratefully acknowledge your face. That word lefanecha has in it the words paneh, your face. And the wonderful thing about that word face in Hebrew is that it's always in the plural. There's no single face of God. We only see we see all the faces of God. And so when I wake up in the morning before I open my eyes, I'm making a kind of a vow that says, when I open my eyes, I will see the face of God in all its myriad forms and permutations. And today I won't be fooled into thinking this is not the face of God, because the face of God wears such strange disguises sometimes. So I want to, as I'm waking up, I want to say, I gratefully acknowledge your face, God, in my life, in the world, in how it's coming to me today. And then the traditional prayer says Melech Chai V'Kayam, which is this sovereignty. And I changed it to Ruach because I just don't relate as well to the Melech idea. But the Ruach as a face of God is like saying there's this great spirit, Chai V'Kayam. It lives and endures. And as I step into my life, I am going to encounter some of these faces. And what's going to happen is that everything I see passes away. There is this transient, this quality of life that doesn't seem to endure at all. Everything rises and passes away. And I could get really bummed out about that. Or I can realize that even though everything passes away, there is something that endures. And I want to connect myself with that place of eternity. And not just, identify. If I only identified with my body, I know that, that's not a great place to identify with, because it's falling apart in various different ways. Any kind of thing out there is not what I want to attach myself. I want to connect myself to God in devekut, in connection to the oneness. And I call that Ruach, Ruach HaKodesh, that great spirit. It lives and endures no matter what. So I want to plant that remembrance, realization inside me. And then I open up to this moment when consciousness is returning to me. I don't know where I've been in my sleep, but there's a life force that's coming back into me. And I say, Shehechazarta bi nishmati bechemla. So you are returning my soul, my awareness, my consciousness, my potential. You're returning it to me in this very moment. How? Bechemla, with compassion. My life comes to me with this, the sense of compassion and really of beauty. Shechazarta bi nishmati bechemla. I'm acknowledging this moment, and I always remember when I worked at a home for developmentally disabled adults for a while, and it was my job to wake up the residents and get them ready for their workshop that they were going to. And every day I would wake up this one young man named Dougie, and I would come into his room. I would gently touch him on the shoulder, and his eyes would pop open, and he would look at me with utter surprise, and he would say, "I woke up." it touched me every day. And one of the things about gratefulness, one of the things I learned from Brother David Steindl-Rast about gratefulness, is that it has an element of surprise in it. It's like when we are jaded and cynical of like whatever in that place, it's hard to feel gratefulness. But when we come to the place where we can be surprised by life, then, we're like Dougie saying, I woke up. What a miracle, really. Yeah. And then the last part of the phrase is really kind of poignant to me. It says, Rabba emunatecha. And Rabba emunatecha are words that are actually taken from the Book of Lamentations, which is our most, sort of bummer book in the whole Bible. It's a terrible kind of description of suffering that our people have been through, and the poignancy of it, that taking that line from the Book of Lamentations and placing it in this place of gratefulness, it kind of like redeems even the moments of suffering for me. And Rabba Emunatecha says, it talks about faith, but it's not my faith. It's God's faith in me. It means that it comes with a sense of I am being seen and known and loved for exactly who I am in this moment. And I am seen for my potential of what is emerging through me. And so I say to God, how great is your faith in me? And you gave me this day to do something with it, to be the person I was meant to be. So I really wanted, so these words are just sort of packed with deliciousness and possibility. I want to chant them again with you, now that we really have started to, understand what they mean. And I got so obsessed with this prayer that I created an app for iPhones that is called Flavors of Gratefulness. And every day you can listen to a different flavor, a different melody, a different mood of gratefulness, because gratefulness has so many different faces. So this morning I went and looked at the app to see what is today's flavor, and I wanted to chant that with you. So as we look at the words and see it not just as words that we say, but as a practice that opens up possibilities for us, and opens up a sense that we can come into the awareness of unconditional gratefulness, that nexus point between receiving the blessing of life and becoming generous to allow that blessing to move through us. So today's flavor of gratefulness goes like this. Modah ani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Chant this with me. Modah ani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. שחסרת בי נשמתי בחדלה רבה אמונתך שחסרת בי נשמתי בחדלה רבה אמונתך מודה אני לפניך روح خيرك يا موضع هني لفانك روح خيرك يا شكسر تبري نشمتي بخلال رهبة المنتهى شكسر تبري نشمتي بخلال رهبة المنتهى. Let's do it once more. Modah ani lefanecha ruach chayrika Modah ani lefanecha ruach chayrika שחסר תברי נשמתי בחלה רבה אמונתך שחסר תברי נשמתי בחלה רבה I gratefully acknowledge your faith. Spirit lives and endures. You return my soul to me with compassion. How great is your faith in me. What a beautiful way to awaken each day to the mystery. And if you want to push that up a little bit further to see what's underneath here, there's just this teaching that I want to share with you first from Rabbi Shefa. And he talks about our spiritual path as moving from this place of entitlement. Really, that's kind of like that default place, which is the place of entitlement is the place that says, oh, it should be a certain way. I should have, good health, the right job, the right partner. And what happens is when I lose whatever it is I think I should have, I am really pissed off. I'm really just upset. And there's a kind of a disturbance inside my heart because an entitlement is one of the obstacles to gratefulness, but it is sort of like kind of the normal place a lot of us live, in this place of entitlement. And it's hard to be grateful because whatever we feel we are entitled to, we will lose. And when we lose it, we will be pissed off. And it's hard to find our way to gratefulness. So he says that spiritual life moves us from that place of entitlement to the realization that everything is a blessing, that everything that we see, everything in our life is this gift. It's a blessing. And, Judaism tells us that we should be saying 100 blessings a day. And really, those 100 blessings a day represent this kind of awareness that of like, oh, everything's a blessing, And when we say that blessing, we come into gratefulness. We acknowledge the giver of that, and we connect ourselves with the source of that blessing when we say a blessing. And he says that there is yet another stage in the spiritual life when not only is it a blessing, but it is an outright miracle. It's a miracle that my breath is that I'm breathing this moment. It's a miracle that the things are working fairly well. It's a miracle that even that the sun came up this morning, and that it's like every little thing, where our eyes are open to the miracle. So when we lose something that's a blessing, it's sad, but it's not going to make us so angry, because we're going to be still open to the next blessing that's coming. And when we lose something that is a miracle, it's also not going to break us. It's not going to tear us away from our source, because we'll still be open to miracles. So I think of that pathway that I'm on, and I'm at every stage in it. Sometimes I feel entitled. Sometimes I realize that life is filled with blessings, and I'm open to it. And sometimes I wake up and I notice the miracle. And that really is what kind of fuels this prayer that we're saying of gratefulness. So I decided one day, a few years ago, I wrote to my students, and I was curious, because when I'm working on a quality like gratefulness, any quality really, what I do is I do a kind of an inquiry, and I say, well, what is it that keeps me from being grateful all the time? What is it? And I wrote to my students, and they wrote back to me. I just said, well, what keeps you from being grateful? And so I came up with this list, and as we are, naming these obstacles to gratefulness, I want to just ask you just to notice in your own life, is this obstacle yours? And I think there's actually even a reaction thing. You can say, this, oh yeah, this one's mine. You can press that button, or just notice which. And sometimes I have all of these obstacles, and sometimes there's one that is particularly present for me. So I'm going to name them, and you can just notice if these, because what I do in my practice is when I notice what the obstacle is to the quality that I'm trying to cultivate, then I want to meet that obstacle with my practice, and that's what we'll do. Okay, ready? So, overwhelm, worry, anxiety about getting things done, being distracted, the challenges of aging, being on automatic, being too busy, feeling weighed down with responsibilities, jadedness, cynicism, fatigue, chronic pain, fear of not having or being enough, fear of engaging with life, entitlement, being too full of myself, being attached to my preferences, beliefs about what it's supposed to be, comparing mind. And comparing mind is, when you feel like you're either better or worse than anything else, and you're always comparing one thing to another. That's a certain state. Getting caught up in too many details, not receiving, not trusting, focusing on what's wrong or on what or who is missing or lacking, feeling wounded, resentment, bitterness, anger, sadness, depression and or numbness, feeling sorry for myself, disappointment, lack of generosity, need to be always in control, negative, small-minded, programmed thoughts, and lack of perspective about what really matters. Any of those resonate for you? And it's just good to notice, like, oh yeah, when I'm caught up in these obstacles, it's really hard to find my way to gratefulness. So what I wanted to do with the last half hour of our class is really look at how do we meet these obstacles in our practice so that we can find our way to gratefulness. Because it's one thing saying those words, but sometimes you can say words and not feel it and not be in that place of unconditional gratefulness. And then you have to kind of look and see what is impediment, what is the obstacle, what do I have to work with? So what I've come up with and is 3 different strategies to meet these obstacles to gratefulness. And the 3 strategies I have is one of them is presence. So what I notice is that when I am overwhelmed, worried, and distracted, I'm automatic or busy or feeling weighed down by responsibilities, what I notice is that I'm not really present. I'm in the past or in the future, and my mind is not, and my energy is not right here. And right here and now is the only place I can receive the gift of life. If I'm thinking about what's going to happen in the future or what happened in the past, I am not present. And when I'm not present, I can't come to gratefulness. Um, um, so Ben, come back to that
Presence.
Yeah. So to that handout again, because I want to just look at these again, and because the second strategy in dealing with these obstacles has to do with is that the strategy of wonder, of rapture, of opening to the mystery of life. So when I am feeling jaded, fatigue, in pain, in fear, I am not open to the mystery. So when in my spiritual practice, I open to that mystery, then I can bypass or meet some of those obstacles, like comparing mind or getting caught up in detail or not receiving. And then the third strategy that I work with has to do with old stuff that is in my heart. And I call it heart work, clearing the old patterns. And so when I'm feeling sorry for myself, if I'm disappointed, if I'm feeling wounded and holding resentment, it means that my heart is not available for the blessing of this moment. And I need to do some healing before I can come to gratefulness. And Ben, if you'll go to the next page of the handouts.
Top of that page.
Top of that page. There are 3 practices that I thought we would taste. And these are practices that just represent pathways to gratefulness. Because sometimes I can't get to it, and then I need to do a practice. So the first practice is a practice of presence. And I didn't put what the note, where this comes from, but it comes from, I think it's Parshat Vayetze. It is the story of Jacob on his journey, and he has an archetypal moment of presence on his journey. He's on his journey. He's running away from his brother, and he goes to sleep. He has a dream, and the dream is of angels going up and down a ladder, connecting heaven and earth. And he wakes up from the dream, and he says these words that represent kind of the antidote to all of these obstacles. He says, "Manorah hamakom hazeh." He says, how awesome is this place, this present moment. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. When I am present, I can find my way to gratefulness, and I can receive the gift. So let's take a few minutes to chant this chant and to tune into this possibility. And there's one part of the chant that says, Hamakom hazeh, Hamakom המקום הזה, מה נורא 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 המקום הזה. At the end of the chant, just close your eyes, bring your attention to the breath, and breathe into this present moment of miracle. How awesome is this place? This is the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. God was here and I didn't even notice. And when I stepped through that door of awareness, then suddenly gratefulness is accessible to me again. I can open up to that flow. So the second strategy that I use in order to find my way to gratefulness when I'm blocked is something I called ecstatic practice. This is why I chant, because if I can touch the wonder, the rapture, if I can open to the mystery of life, then I can meet those obstacles and let them dissolve. And there is a prayer that we say 3 times a day, and it begins with this line, and it always kind of lifts me up into a wider perspective of a place of wonder. And the prayer says, Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Hallelujah. Happy are those people, Yoshvei Beitecha, who dwell in your house, which is God consciousness. God consciousness is this awareness of the unity and connection of everything. When you're in that state, when you've lifted yourself up above your cynicism, Od Hallelujah, it's so easy to praise. And so when I chant this chant, it's finding my way back to a place where then gratefulness is possible, because I am meeting and counteracting some of those kind of habitual places of the way that my mind gets caught up in negativity. So let's try this as a pathway to gratefulness. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Hallelujah, Od Hallelujah. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Hallelujah, Od Hallelujah. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Hallelujah, Od Hallelujah. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Once more. So as we lift ourselves up into God consciousness, into the awareness of connection, and find the praise in us, then we have found our way also to this state of unconditional gratefulness. So sometimes when we wake up in the morning and we say those words, which is our prayer of waking up, we might use it as a kind of a diagnostic of saying, oh yeah, well, I'm not quite there. I'm not quite feeling it. I'm feeling weighed down. And that is the moment to really look into your heart and to be able to notice, like, oh, there's some work that I need to do to get myself to gratefulness, which is absolutely essential. It is the foundation of my spiritual life. If I can't find my way there, then I won't be able to receive the gift of this day. And I also won't be able to be a channel of generosity in the world and to bring, to be God's hands and eyes and heart to the world. So there was one last strategy that I wanted to share with you. And if Ben just move up the handout once, the heart work. And I call this clearing, the heart work, meaning there's something that weighing on my heart that's keeping me from that state of gratefulness. And, I think of the book of Exodus, of Leviticus, giving us this commandment that says, there is we must clear the ashes on the altar each day. And the altar, of our ancestors was the altar of sacrifice. But now it is the altar of sacrifice is inside our hearts. And we can't burn a clear fire of love inside us unless we clear the ashes of the past, which is old patterns, clearing that residue, clearing the things that we're holding on to from the past or are sticking to us. And so I wanted to bring this one last practice, and then maybe we'll have time for some questions, and we'll end with the prayer of gratefulness again. So the words are Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. And it comes from Isaiah that says, comfort my people. And I would, if you could unshare, Ben, and we'll look at each other, and what I like to do is to chant this, and to chant it to all of this circle of squares, all of these 226 people here, and to chant the chant and just sort of find different people's faces and see if we can chant it to each other, this place of comfort. Because, I walk out into the world and I realize, everybody's got tsuras, everybody. And we can be a channel for that, sense of comfort, to pour it into the world, to each other. So we'll chant it to each other. And the last time we chant it, I'll ask you to put your hand on your heart and to allow God to chant it to you, to find the places inside you that are carrying some old stuff that won't, that are weighing on your own heart. But we'll start first by chanting it to each other. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. You might want to just find one person to look at and to send it to them first. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. Find another person to chant to. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, So I invite you to put your hand on your own heart and to feel the places of heaviness in your heart that might keep you from feeling that gratefulness. And allow the chant to penetrate, to clear away some of the ashes on the altar of the heart. And allow that love in. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, So take in that comfort, allow it to dissolve some of your defenses, soften some of the hard places in your heart. And from here, perhaps we can find our way to gratefulness. And you can kind of allow a smile to form on your lips. smiling towards the inside of you to allow yourself to be bathed, to be cleansed in gratefulness, and even a sense of unconditional gratefulness for being itself, for the journey that we're on. And I wanted to see, Julie, if there are any questions that people wanted to put into the chat for the last few minutes that we have, if you could maybe look at them and bring.
I know there was a question earlier that you might want to expand on that you mentioned briefly, but the difference between ruach and melech and why you use ruach, spirit.
Yeah, I use in my prayer, I use melech sometimes, but I don't want to. There's this way that that names of God can become idolatrous. We can get stuck on a certain image of God, and we have so many different images of God because God has so many faces, and so it helps me to use different images of God according to the moment of my prayer. So there's moments when Melech is exactly the right image I want to use because I want to know that somebody is in charge and I'm not. And then there's other moments, that moment of awakening for me is a moment when I want to tune in to that living and enduring spirit. And so we are blessed with a great kind of lots of different resources of images of God, and every image we use calls up a different relationship to the mystery. So that's kind of why I like to use Ruach at this moment of prayer.
And someone asked about a prayer or a blessing for resetting. So let's say you say the Modah in the morning and then you have a moment or a bad day. Is there something that you can say to reset yourself?
To reset, meaning I can go back and say this prayer all day long, and I do. But what I want to do is before I do the reset, I want to notice what's the obstacle, and bring compassion to that moment. And I think this is a kind of a reset. But I want to, to take care of myself in a way, to say, okay, there's something that is triggering me, and I can use my own prayer life in order to recover from that place of being triggered and to reconnect. Sometimes it's just taking a breath, feeling my feet on the ground, feeling a sense of that the Great Spirit is here with me, taking a pause. So I think I do that reset many, many times a day.
Yeah.
And gratefulness.
And is there a prayer to say when you're especially happy?
Is a prayer to say?
Yeah, things like.
Well, lots of hallelujah is the best, the best prayer, I think, of that. But when you say thank you, when you say Modani lefanecha, and to me, the melody that I use really matters because there, when I, every day I make up new melodies all the time that expresses whatever is in me, and I can take that prayer of gratefulness and bring it to happiness. But even just hallelujah, hallelujah, and to sing it. And just to notice also what I've been taking for granted, Today I walked over to the pier. It's a private pier, but they let people walk on it. And I went over to the owners of the pier and I said, I never thanked you for letting me do this. I was like, thank you for letting us walk on your pier, but it's like, I hadn't thought about that, So that lifted my heart to be able to do that. And it probably gave them a moment of gratefulness as well. It's very contagious, this when you express your gratefulness. And So shall we end with? We'll just end with the flavor of the day of gratefulness.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here with me. Please visit me at my website, rabbishefagold.com, and lots of resources there, books that I've written, and chants that I make available to everyone. And I hope we will continue to be in touch. Modah ani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Modah ani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. שכזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך שכזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה Modah ani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Modah ani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. שכזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך שכזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך